I've had several people request a Whatever Happened to episode of the Chicago Band Urge Overkill. While the group was labeled alternative rock, they emerged from Chicago in the late 1980s and early 90s, looking and sounding very different from what was popular at the time. Its members wore giant medallions and velvet shirts. They actually had a sense of humor, and instead of being influenced by the likes of Joy Division or Wire, they paid homage to Jimmy Webb, Hot Chocolate, and Neil Diamond. Today, we're going to explore the history of the band. Founding members, vocalist and guitarist Nash Cato and Eddie King Roser both grew up in Minnesota, but they wouldn't meet until years later in 1985 when they both attended Chicago's Northwestern University. Before he was known as Nash Cato, he was born Nathan Kutrud. Growing up to Norwegian parents in the racially mixed south side of Minnesota, Nathan's father would be a Lutheran minister who introduced him to funk music and gospel choirs. Roser, meanwhile, was a child of 70s AM radio, including Paul McCartney and Wings, and Badfinger. Side note, guys, I've done a whole video on the history of Badfinger, the link is down below. In 1981, Roser followed his parents' footsteps, going to Chicago's Northwestern, where he would meet producer Steve Albini and Lyle Pressler, with whom he was roommates with. Pressler had previously played with the hardcore DC punk band Minor Threat, and they'd go on to be part of the DIY straight-edge punk movement. Initially, Cato started a short-lived band with Pressler, but it was clear that their approach to music was drastically different. Cato would tell Forbes, "Lyle and I were originally going to start a band. He was in Minor Threat, and they broke up because he went to NU, but we were going to start this band, and it ended when I asked, 'Hey, what are we going to wear?' And he was like, 'What the F are you talking about?' I went, 'Well, we have to wear something on stage.' I was thinking suits, because of the whole funk thing, and then he transferred and I hooked up with Eddie, and we started Urge Overkill. They would soon add drummer Pat Byrne. One of the band's first fans would be Steve Albini, who acted as a producer for the group's debut EP, Strange Eye, in 1986, which was put out on the producer's Ruthless label, which was then followed by their first full-length studio record, 1989's Jesus Urge Superstar, and 1990's Americruiser, and 1991's Supersonic Storybook. It was these three releases that were put out on Chicago label Touch and Go Records. Urge Overkill would get their name from the lyrics from a Parliament song, and the band would soon become known for their flamboyant and flashy image and humor, which was part of their whole package. It was a common sight for the band to show up to those early gigs wearing clown pants and top hats and oversized matching wide lapel suits, gold medallions, and all-white jumpsuits. Urge Overkill's members seemed to stay away from flannel, denim, or leather, which are typically staples of rock performers. Roser would tell the LA Times the purpose of dressing up like that, saying, "We were trying to shock people. I mean, for all the supposed punk rock that was going on in Chicago, the bands all dressed like cops. They all had crew cuts, the black t-shirts, the boots, and they all looked the same. I thought, this is punk? This is think for yourself?" The band would admittingly construct their outfits from racks of thrift stores, including AmVets. Urge Overkill's sound was hard to nail down, being described by Rolling Stone, and I quote, "infused sound arena rock, pop, and punk." Others liken them to the Beatles, or Cheap Trick of the 90s alternative rock generation, or as Spin Magazine would describe them, and I quote, "something new, something borrowed, and something Blue Oyster Cult." It was along the way that they changed their drummers, bringing in longtime fan John Rowan, who would later become known as Blackie Hollywood, and finally Blackie Onassis, who joined the group in 1989. Onassis would grow up as John Rowan in Beverly. He got into rock drumming with a neighborhood basement band and eventually fell into the rock scene when he moved to the north side. Blackie would tell the Chicago Tribune in 1993, "When I went to see them play, I flipped out. They were the most flamboyant thing in town, wearing bizarre makeup and playing arena rock at places like Batteries Not Included for like 7 people, 4 of whom were in the opening band." Upon joining the band, he would tell them, "Don't make any apologies for what you're doing, and don't worry about your friends and hardcore bands thing. This is a great gig, let's run with it." The group got a lot of attention from Spin Magazine during the early 90s before they got signed to a major label, who touted them as the next big thing and compared their 1990 album Americruiser as, and I quote, "a punk rock version of ZZ Top's Eliminator." Despite all the hype, the band nearly called it quits. Rock was feeling stale by 1990 and 1991, and Cato would admit to Spin Magazine, "We were ready to throw in the towel. There was no concrete manifestation or demand for rock. Nobody wanted to hear it anymore. We were like, we're in the wrong business," and then out of the blue, Nirvana picked us up. By the end of 1991, Nirvana's second record, Nevermind, was on the verge of displacing Michael Jackson from the album charts, and it would be Nirvana who took Urge Overkill out on the road with them through Europe and the Midwest. It proved to be the biggest favor anybody had done for the band so far. According to the Chicago Tribune, while the band was on tour in Italy with Nirvana, Blackie and Kato took a walk with frontman Kurt Cobain, who told the group not to abandon their fashion gag and to sign with Geffen Records, the same label Nirvana was signed to. And that's exactly what the group did. Record labels at this time were eager to sign any band that sounded like or were connected to Nirvana. The band in 1992 inked a deal with Geffen after being discovered by a talent scout named Mio Vukovic. And Vukovic would tell the Chicago Tribune, they have this fun fascination with this period from 1967 to 73, when things were both at their cheesiest and at their coolest. It's like Las Vegas meets Star Trek, he'd say. But not everybody was happy with the band's move to a major label. Allegedly, the move resulted in bitter feelings between Steve Albini and the band. Albini would claim that the band promised in a handshake deal to have him produce their next album and put it out on Touch and Go Records. But signing with Geffen afforded the band the ability to work with a variety of different producers. Blackie would tell the Baltimore Sun, a lot of producers have such a dogmatic style. They want things to sound one way, their way because their name is going on the record. And at the smaller label level, you have more egomaniacs because people are trying to make a name for themselves. But in the end, your music should be what you want it to sound like. He, referring to Steve Albini, had a record done for us before. He basically took our songs and gave them his sound, and none of us were happy with it. That was Jesus Urge Superstar. So when we came back to do Supersonic Storybook, he tried to do it again, and we were like, no, we're going to keep the guitars clean, we're going to keep the vocals loud, and we're going to put some bass in the mix. He got all ticked off, and at the end, he took his name off the record, he'd recall. It would result in Albini and the band bickering in the press, and Albini would refer to the band as, and I quote, spoiled children, and, and I quote, a sad comedy, according to Spin Magazine. Albini wasn't the only one angry at the band, as there was soon a backlash in Chicago against the group, with a fanzine called The Stalker, which took its name from a song on the band's 1993 debut record for Geffen called Saturation. The Stalker was an anti-fanzine for people who were not fans of Urge Overkill, as Spin Magazine would put it. The publication took glee in mocking the band. Ironically, the publisher of the fanzine had her own alias like the members of Urge Overkill, and went by the name Bad B, and printed about 5,000 copies of the fanzine per month. On top of that, she would frequently go out in Chicago dressed up as Kato, but the band seemed to brush off the lady as being off her rocker, and despite the bad blood with some on their home base, they would find an ally and a friend in fellow Chicago native Liz Phair. The band's humor also meant they had some pretty big vols, with Vukovic recalling a tour that the band did around 1992 or 1993, where they played a predominantly black neighborhood in LA, with him recalling Nash looked like Keith Richards in 1969 with bell-bottoms, a medallion, and blue-tinted sunglasses. You could have bumped into him at a Shaft movie. There was a black couple sitting at a table, and the girl looked up at him and said, "You look groovy." Nash would pull his sunglasses down and wink at her and walk away, with Vukovic adding, "He's the only white man alive who could get away with that and not get killed." The band would deliver their final recording for Touch and Go, an EP named Stull, and Roser would tell Spin Magazine where the EP's name came from, saying Stull is a town in Kansas that's supposed to be the geographical center of the US. It's nothing but a cemetery and an old burnt-out church. About 60 people live there, and it's a really frightening place. Supposedly it's some kind of cult place for Satanists, one of the 7 gates of hell, he would recall. The EP would also contain a cover of the Neil Diamond song Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon. It would be this cover that would be included in the Quentin Tarantino film Pulp Fiction, in the scene where actress Uma Thurman's character has an unfortunate run-in with some high-powered heroine. So where did the idea of the Neil Diamond cover come from? Well, the band were fans of Neil Diamond and would talk to Billboard magazine, where Roser would tell the publication, "We didn't record the song for the movie at all. Recording it for the Stull EP was really a spur-of-the-moment decision. We were at our producer Kramer's house looking through his record collection, and we got into playing this tune. Apparently Quentin Tarantino knew of us and picks all the music for his movies. He discussed it with Uma Thurman, who dances to the song in the movie, and she was like, 'I love it.' It would be by chance that the band came on Quentin Tarantino's radar, as the director was in England and came across the 6-song EP while visiting a record store. The band's cover would peak at number 11 on the Billboard Rock charts by the end of 1994, thanks to the movie, and it would receive significant play on MTV. The band would end up meeting Neil Diamond at one of his shows, with the singer telling Billboard, "They came to meet me backstage at one of my shows in Chicago, and I may be wrong, but I was wearing something similar when I wrote that song." He'll go on to wish the band luck, telling them to leave room at the top for him. The group's first release for Geffen, 1993 Saturation, saw them enlist the Butcher Brothers as producers. It was a strange choice given that they'd most famously worked with rap act Cypress Hill at the time, with Blackie revealing the reason for the decision, saying, "The Butcher Brothers are jack of all trades. They're not hung up on a specific sound, the way a lot of producers are. Saturation sounded extra produced because we wanted it to sound that way, but we knew that they could give us an almost live demo quality of what we were going for. I mean, they've done everything from hard rock to hip hop to top 40. They're not stuck in one mode. The band also didn't want to emulate, as they put it, Nirvana wannabe sounds, with Blackie telling the Chicago Tribune, Cypress Hill and Public Enemy are putting out better rock and roll records than 99% of the Nirvana type bands. That's why we came to Philly to make this record. Philly has a vibe, a soul, a rap. The success of Pulp Fiction and a soundtrack, coupled with the band's major label debut coming out around the same time, propelled the group's sales and resulted in the band's singles Sister Havana and Positive Bleeding getting airplay on both rock radio and MTV. By 1993, Chicago appeared to be the new hotbed of alternative rock, displacing Seattle, but with one difference. Blackie would tell the LA Times, "There's a lot of attention being paid to Chicago suddenly, but you still can't put a label on the Chicago sound. I mean, think of the bands that have come out here in the past few years. Veruca Salt's music is like the polar opposite of what the Smashing Pumpkins are doing," he'd say. While Roser would add, Chicago is a big city with a lot of things to do and places to play without being New York or LA, where you can be under a microscope during your first show. You're not that isolated in Chicago, but you're isolated enough so you can sort of labor in obscurity a little more, he'd say. Unlike the alternative rock acts who were popular in the early 90s, Urge Overkill had a sense of humor, they had stage names, they put a lot of thought into their look and didn't take themselves too seriously, and they didn't chase trends, and they didn't have one principal songwriter. Blackie would tell Spin Magazine, "We are for the ladies, our self-confidence is at a level where you don't have to prove our masculinity with any bogus caveman grunts." It was a far cry from the popular bands at the time who hailed from the West Coast, whether it was Seattle or LA, with Kato adding, "We do rock out, but we're about writing good songs first and foremost. A lot of bands seem afraid to show that they have more emotions and anger. We are not afraid," he'd say. The group would put out their follow-up album for Geffen in 1995, but this release represented a low point in the members' personal relationship. Kato and Roser weren't even on talking terms, recording their parts in separate studios, and adding to the tension was that Blackie was using heroin, something he'd find himself in handcuffs for by the end of the year. Comparatively speaking, it was definitely a darker album. The band's tour to support their final album of the 90s saw them run into trouble with their opening act, Guided by Voices. The band would be dropped off the tour after one of Urge Overkill's roadies and security personnel beat up the group's frontman after they attempted to perform an encore. And despite losing Guided by Voices, the band's tour was hampered by other problems, most notably playing to half-empty venues and slow ticket sales, resulting in the group scrapping the dates. The poor album sales, infighting, and Blackie's heroin addiction resulted in the group combusting. Roser would tell Rolling Stone, "Urge Overkill had the positive energy of the Monkees and all for one, one for all type thing. We had songs that were serious, heartfelt rock, but the spirit of the thing was good times. Towards the end, when tensions in the band were overwhelming, the spirit of that became a sham. It was dishonest to continue," he'd say. 4 years after the Smashing Pumpkins, Liz Phair, and Urge Overkill shot to popularity, the band called it quits in the summer of 1997. After going solo, Roser and Nash would eventually reunite in 2004, with Roser telling Rolling Stone, "I couldn't go to a show without 10 people coming up and saying, 'You guys have to get back together.'" The band wouldn't reunite with Blackie, with Roser telling Rolling Stone, "He hasn't proven himself to be a model citizen." 10 years had passed, and bands like The Strokes, The White Stripes, and The Hives were the new kids on the block. With the band's reunion, they would tone down their flamboyant style, with Roser telling Rolling Stone, "We became tired of it. The more we did it, the more people focused on that. It was like, maybe you've noticed, but we can write songs. Now we just hit the stage in the tradition of James Brown and some of the soul groups, where you look sharp, but it's not a big yuck wink wink thing." The band would tour in the years that followed and put out 2 albums since reforming, including 2011's Rock and Roll Submarine and this year's We. They would also appear as a musical guest at the roast of director Quentin Tarantino. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe. We'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.